I'll be honest, this video is due almost entirely to Shadiversity's recent glut of oversized swords content, one of the most frequently cited caveats to justify which being the assumption of superhuman strength on the part of the wielder, since without it they wouldn't be able to so much as lift the thing, much less use it with the artful dexterity needed for combat. And so then this got me thinking, seeing as how I'm presently working on a book about the systematic design, construction, and implementation of the super soldier, how exactly would you arm a being with superhuman powers and abilities? And of course, this can be applied to both sci-fi and fantasy settings. Nearly every alien species in the Omniverse is said to be stronger, faster, tougher, smarter, longer-lived, and so forth than humans. Plus, they've almost always got tougher hides, better senses, bigger brains, or whatever other advantages you want. Granted, sometimes they've got some specific weaknesses like kryptonite or silver or fire, but other times they also have actual wizard powers on top, or special potions or gadgets that let them just gain whatever superpowers they need until the effects wear off. Now, two things I need to specify before we go forward. First, in case the above lists weren't enough of an indication, though I called them super soldiers earlier, it'd be more accurate to call the subjects of this conversation Goliaths, since their principal advantage is going to be in all things to do with physical combat. And second, I'm going to be focused on the domain of personal combat prior to the invention of firearms, since, as I've already expressed thoroughly elsewhere, the idea of the super soldier in a modern military context is as absurd as it is redundant. So, we're looking at just your generic superhuman instead. That is, a Homo sapien whose base stats, strength, vitality, agility, intelligence, etc. are boosted well above the regular and even above the superior human range. Now, you might be reasonably expected to think the answer to the question of what weapon is best would be pretty well and truly settled. However, the actual utility of any weapon, no matter how advanced or deadly, is still ultimately limited by the skill and/or prowess of its wielder. Also, in the age of automated, long-range ballistic and AI drone warfare, insofar as a human infantry component were to remain in real military use at all, it would just stand to reason that they would be just augmented troops, making them sturdier, hardier, and overall more nimble and adept at operating independently without supporting logistical and command strings attached. And all this still doesn't factor in the more nebulous variables like operative conditions, namely visibility, positioning, or the presence of combustible, explosive, or corrosive materials that might affect the viability or reliability of firearms, mission profiles, force size, or unit count disparity. Besides, as I alluded to near the end of my last ninja-related video, the very pertinence of stealth and infiltration in the traditional sense, i.e. men in all black sneaking around in the woods, scaling the fortress walls in the black of night, is being made increasingly irrelevant in the face of new and improved observation and surveillance tech. Basically, if you have a pulse, are human-shaped, or are wearing anything that transmits signals or uses electricity, there's almost no way a near-peer adversary won't know where you are. And as the war in Ukraine proves, if they know where you are, it's only a matter of moments before their nearest anti-all-things man-made detachment does as well. So for stealth missions, barring the invention of cuttlefish-style active camouflage, or perhaps a screen of photoreactive nanobots, basically, think of a reactive holographic smokescreen that can not only make you look like a bush, but could also theoretically make the bush look like a tank, or a tank look like a tree, etc. The best bet would probably be a small anti-tank or big game rifle, since a superhuman could easily cope with the added recoil, as well as hump around the added mass such a ludicrous gun would necessarily have packed on.
It's also real hard for the enemy to spot you if they don't have a head anymore.
Essentially, this is where the closest approximate to a 40K style bolter would enter play, if ever. Simply put, a bolt gun conceptually fails for two reasons. First, the barrel's too short to fully accelerate a cannon-caliber projectile, hence the necessary addition of the secondary rocket booster. And second, the bolter's standard mag cap is 20 to 30, according to every lore source I could find. Standard frontline infantry practices are to have 7 to 10 mags, 6 to 9 on your person, and 1 in the gun on active deployment. That still only gives the average Space Marine a max total of 300 shots they can carry into battle. And while a bolter shell is plenty chungus enough to one-shot pretty much anything at or below a Space Marine's own weight class, it's also entirely overkill for anything a realistic superhuman would be asked to deal with in a world without literal wizards, demons, and bio-titans running around.
Where Wolf was going with this until his brain sharded again is that Superman's standard armament would most probably be an LMG, light machine gun such as the Saw, since all the reasons why standard humans don't use them in this way just don't apply to them.
Now, I've already made a video ranting about how speed and agility are the ultimate assets for any super being with any sort of aspirations of combative effectiveness, so I'll not beleaguer the point any more than is actually necessary. However, one thing I will point out is that force equals mass times velocity squared, meaning that while a threefold increase in attack strength yields a linear threefold increase in strike potency, a threefold increase in strike speed yields an exponential ninefold increase in striking force. But this brings us to one of the two quintessential points I'm trying to make with this video. The issue with putting historically accurate weapons into the hands of someone whose physique measures closer to the lighter end of heavy construction equipment is that these tools are designed the way they are to promote dexterity, not strength, contrary to what many RPG lore and stat sheets claim. There's a common misconception that the main functional difference between a sword and an axe is that the former is more powerful on account of being heavier, while the latter is more dexterous. While it is true that swords are principally dexterity weapons, the idea that you cannot feint or parry with an axe is simply objectively false. And while the latter does apply more force to target on account of having more of its mass concentrated farther from its leverage axis, the main issue is that they're less forgiving in terms of range and reach, since an axe or a hammer is circa 90% stick by length, compared to a sword, which is the opposite. Now, you might think that given what I said earlier about speed, the advantage should be moot, since a Superman should easily be able to strike with enough momentum to counteract any meaningful difference the mass distribution might incur. Which rings true to my reason, and when coupled with the actual reason why swords were historically preferred over axes and hammers for personal combat, that they were more carry and quick-draw friendly and not riding on or knocking into your hip or thigh bones with such bothersome regularity, they should make for the most obvious hero's weapon after all, right? Well, again, yes, but actually no. You see, we're missing the one critical weakness, the Achilles heel, I'd dare to say, of swords. That being the hard and cold fact that their delicate balance and narrow geometry means they tend to suffer somewhat in the structural integrity department compared to their more brutish brethren. To put it simply, a sword blade is more likely to snap under the sorts of forces a superhuman warrior would be imparting on it, whereas a sledgehammer or a crowbar is specifically built to withstand industrial use. The sledgehammer in the hands of a normal man can shatter rocks, chip concrete, and pack ice. That same tool, therefore, in the hands of Captain America or Master Chief, even without his power armor, would render pretty much all forms of personal protection utterly useless. And the best part is, a hammer can't run out of bullets. So to give us the best of both worlds, I propose a compromise of sorts. You know how it's said that behind every legend is a grain of truth? Well, consider this the seedling granule at the heart of the Dragon Slayer Buster sword myth. Behold, the bar mace. Pretty much just a beveled bar of flat iron, or rather of S5 shock steel, the same as what jackhammer heads are made of. That way we've got the durability and force magnification powers of the hammer neatly paired with the handling and quick draw potential of a sword. And with his magnified stats, the sheer kinetic trauma of 20 to 30 pounds of metal should be more than adequate to perform its allotted task. But yeah, I could probably rant on about this topic for at least 3 more hours, but that's pretty much the extent of my original thoughts on it, so I think I'll spare you all the rest of my pointless babble and just leave it off here with a reminder to go ahead and click the like and subscribe buttons to show the algorithm you're engaged. Click the membership or super thanks buttons too if you're feeling generous. Check out my books or merch if you like the sorts of places my head is at. Be sure to come follow me on these alternative platforms to take some of the bullets out of YouTube's monopolistic gun. And with all that said, as always, until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay sane, and always remember,
Drone better.